How do you grade the offseason right now for Seattle?
Thanks for having me, fellas. Yeah, the Mariners, there's some bubbling frustration, I think, brewing with Mariners fans. I would grade it as a solid B, B plus for the Mariners, but it does feel a little incomplete. I know the Mariners are still in the market for a proven veteran bat that they'd like to be able to insert either at the top or the middle of the lineup. We can talk about the Brendan Donovan continued rumors here, but yeah, it does feel in some ways incomplete. Mariners have subtracted Jorge Polanco and Gino Suarez from the lineup that was really good and really deep and made it to Game 7 of the ALCS. And so I think some fans here, understandably, are wondering, okay, what's the plan here? We're right there. This is maybe the best Mariners team they've had here in a generation, and they have reasonable World Series hopes this year. So what are we doing to add one more proven guy here? I'm hearing from a lot of Mariners fans as we get closer and closer to spring training here. Is this the lineup? Is this the team? What's going on? I do know the Mariners are continuing to scour the market and look for one more proven bat. I would be surprised if they don't do something by opening day, if not by the start of spring training. But right now, it's been a solid off season. They struck first with Josh Naylor. That was a big commitment on their part. 5 years, $92.5 million, the biggest free agent contract they've handed out to a hitter since Robbie Cano in 2013. So from the Mariners' perspective, obviously that was their priority. He's their middle of the order presence. He fit in perfectly. Naylor did with his team in this clubhouse, obviously in the second half last year and deep into the playoffs. I think because of the timing of that in mid-November, you have a lot of antsy Mariner fans wondering, okay, now what, now what, now what? But overall, it's been a good offseason, but in some ways it does still feel incomplete.
All right, only one thing I want to say. They need what? A third baseman? Didn't they go get a guy that people love in Seattle and he loves Seattle and he's still sitting on the free agent market named Gino Suarez? Why have there been discussions? Like that seems like the most perfect, easiest fit of all time.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, it really is. And he's still out there. And I think the Mariners have been in contact. He has the same agency as Julio Rodriguez. There's great relationships there. Gino is 34 years old. And then when you kind of dive into his numbers, yeah, he had a magical season, 52 home runs, including 3 in the postseason. And his grand slam in Game 5 of the ALCS will go down as one of the biggest swings in Mariners history. Absolutely. And so, yeah, he checks all the boxes. Third base, awesome clubhouse guy. He's been here. He knows what it's like to hit in T-Mobile Park. That said, and part of the Mariners plan from day one this offseason, they've been really open about this. They have a lot of really young, talented infielders coming up, knocking at the door right now. They don't want to block those guys. And specifically, we're talking about Colt Emerson, but they've got Ben Williamson, who played about half the season last year, was sent back down to AAA when they did get Gino Suarez. But Ben Williamson is certainly one of the best defensive third basemen, even as a rookie last year. He proved that. But they want to give those young guys a chance. Then at second base, you got another one in Cole Young, who just turned 22. Is still going to be one of the youngest players in the majors this year. They want to give those guys some runway, and I think that's just part of the economics of Mariner baseball and economics of baseball for teams in the mid market to smaller market. You've got to find a way to get these young guys some opportunities and some runway, and not to sound like, executive speak, but there's a lot of truth in that too. When you've invested a lot, you've invested first round draft picks, you've invested a lot of time and resources in developing these young guys. At some point, they're showing you, hey, we're ready for a real opportunity. And I think Colt Emerson, first and foremost, top 10 prospect in the sport, has a chance to go win this third base job in spring training. Would not shock me at all if he's the top of Mariners camp by the time we get into mid-March, in part because the Mariners are losing a ton of guys to the World Baseball Classic. He's going to get a ton of at-bats in spring training to show what he can do. I think he's as mature as any 20-year-old the Mariners have had coming through here since Ken Griffey Jr., frankly, and maybe Alex Rodriguez. And he's that good, he's that mature, he's that advanced. And so I think the Mariners are really curious to see what he is. And if they sign Gino Suarez to a 2-year deal, 3-year deals, he would probably prefer, they feel like they're blocking maybe one of the best prospects in the entire sport.
Or was it the trade deadline last year? Does it feel like, well, I could do a huge commitment to somebody for an entire season, maybe the next 3 seasons? Or look what we picked up at the trade deadline, and Eugenio Suárez, who had, like you said, the biggest home run in Mariners postseason history, and we picked up Josh Naylor, who stole 100 bases for us in like a month and a half. So did that kind of make them feel like, we'll just wait, we'll just kind of hang around the edges, and then we can make a trade deadline acquisition? Or do they truly think they can replace Jorge Polanco's 136 OPS plus at either second base or third base with one of these young 20-year-old prospects?
It's definitely a little bit of both. I mean, not just this last trade deadline, but you go back even 5 years, 2020 trade deadline, they brought in Andres Munoz and Matt Brash, key pieces of their bullpen still now at the trade deadline. They got Luis Castillo in 22, Randy Arozarena at the trade deadline, and then you add in Naylor and Gino Suarez. I don't think any team in baseball has done more than the Mariners have the last handful of years at the summer trade deadline. And so that's definitely part of the Mariners calculus. It does feel like in some ways that prospects have a little more value in the summer, just because there are maybe a few more teams that recognize they're out of it at that point, and are willing to trade some of their veterans like Arizona was this last year. But again, at the same time, the Mariners, they've proven they have a pretty good development system, and they got to keep those guys churning. Yep. Again, part of it is the economics of it. These guys are young, they're hungry, they're good, but they're also cheap, and you're going to have them, fit the budget really nicely for the next few years. And obviously that helps too. I think part of the calculus again is like you just paid Cal Raleigh. You got Julio Rodriguez committed long-term, now Naylor. Some of these young pitchers are starting to get obviously expensive in their arbitration years too. So with the Mariners and what they're willing to do with their payroll commitments, that is all part of the equation as well. And obviously, Gino Suarez was a $15 million player last year. The Mariners got him, for 2 months at $5 million. So pretty big bargain for them. Josh Naylor in the same boat too. So that's certainly part of the calculus for them, and they've proven it too, right? Again, the last handful of years, if they see something that they need, Jerry Dipoto, Justin Hollander, the Mariners front office have shown a willingness to go out and be aggressive, maybe more aggressive than anyone, to fill those needs in the summer.
So, Adam, is this a budget thing, or is this just they believe that much in their prospects? Because listen, everyone on here loves prospects. We love prospects. Yeah, go prospects. Everyone, we have the 17th rated farm system, whatever the Mariners are, and everyone pumps up their farm system. But you know who isn't a prospect? Eugenio Suárez, because he's going to hit you 40, and you know that, and what he's going to be. So listen, I get it. I do get it. I understand that you don't want to block guys, but I also come from the school of, hey, if I have a proven commodity, I'll take the proven commodity. Anyways, I'm off that now. Let's go to something else. The Mariners have a lot of starting pitchers. Would they be willing to trade one of them to get a piece that they need, whether it's a second baseman or a third baseman?
I don't think so. Yeah, they're not at that point. And again, a guy like Brendan Donovan, who they've been in talks with St. Louis throughout the winter, I still think the Mariners are one of the favorites, if not the favorite, to land Donovan here, who certainly feels like he's going to get dealt before the start of the season. The Mariners were willing, I think, the last couple years to at least entertain the idea of moving one of those starting pitchers, Bryce Miller. Brian Woo's name came up a lot a couple years ago. I don't know how close the Mariners were to dealing Brian Woo, but I know he was on the table at one point, and obviously they're certainly glad they didn't. I think he's a top 10 pitcher in all of baseball right now. And Logan Gilbert, George Kirby are coming off an injury-riddled years a little bit. They really settled in late in the season and the postseason too. And then you've got the Rock, Luis Castillo is sort of the steady presence there, the one real veteran guy that they love. But no, that's one of the questions I had asked over and over at the beginning of this offseason. All right, where are we at with the starting rotation? Is it time to move one of those guys to really get that impact bat? And the Mariners were pretty steadfast. It would have to be something wild, something substantial, and just I don't even know what that would look like, frankly, at this stage of the offseason. So no, I would be stunned if they moved one of those 5 guys right now. That's not to say they won't at some point. They've got 2 of the best starting pitching prospects too. Sorry, AJ, to keep going back to the prospects, but this is one thing the Mariners have proven they do really well is develop young pitching in the minors. They've got Ryan Sloan, just I think turned 20 years old today. Guy who I'm getting Garrett Cole comps to. He's got the size, the fastball. He's got commands the zone, and then the number 3 pick last year out of LSU, Cade Anderson, is already knocking at the door. People are very high on him. So it's a nice problem to have if you're the Mariners. Too much good starting pitching, and at some point, they're going to have to break up with these 5 guys that have been together now a few years. But I think with the Mariners, where they're at right now, they see themselves as the definitive favorites in the AL West. They see themselves as one of the favorites, certainly in the American League, and they're going to lean on that starting pitching again. Again, those guys were banged up a little bit this last year. If they can keep those guys healthy or relatively healthy all season, I think they have pretty high hopes for what they can do together.
This might be your toughest answer you're ever going to have to give, because AJ and I do not believe in spring training stats. What do Mariners fans and what does the Mariners as a front office or coaching staff need to see from Cole Young and Colt Emerson to say, yes, they are starting second baseman and third baseman respectfully? Because I don't think Ben Williamson's power's there. Maybe the defense is there, but to say, ooh, he's definitely our big league starting third baseman this year.
Yeah, for me, Colt Emerson, I think from day one, even before they drafted him, they were so impressed just by the makeup, the maturity. Colt Emerson was still 17 years old when they drafted him out of small town, Ohio. And every step of the way the last few years, he's checked every box. He made his debut in AAA in late September and played in the PCL playoffs with the Tacoma Rainiers and hit 2 home runs. He's a lefty swinger, and both those home runs were off lefties too. So by all accounts, with his minor league track record, he's kind of platoon immune as well. So I think the Mariners are really intrigued by that, how he fares early on here in spring training against lefties. But he spent a lot of time, most of his time at shortstop. I think the Mariners do see him as the eventual heir apparent to JP Crawford at shortstop. But what does he look like at third base? I do think, by all accounts and scouts I've talked to, he's got the arm to play third. He's got the instincts. He's got the athleticism. Just how does he look there over a month consistently? What does he need to work on there defensively? But I think the profile, the makeup with the bat is all there. Again, now he just needs to see it regularly against some major league pitching. And again, I think ultimately the question is how comfortable are the Mariners going to be to hand a really important position like that, third base, to a 20-year-old who's played all of 6 or 7 games above AA. So that's going to be the real question. I don't think they're, again, circling back to just who he is and the makeup, the commitment, the attitude. I've heard a lot of comps to Cal Raleigh just in terms of the makeup and his desire to win, his competitiveness, his maturity. And I think obviously any Mariner fans would love another guy who has similar makeups as Cal Raleigh right now.
Adam, can the bullpen be as good as it was last year? Munoz, Spire, that whole brush, that whole makeup of what – because they threw a lot, okay? They did throw a lot of innings, and they threw a lot of innings in the postseason. So can they be as good and as effective as they were last year?
Yeah, I think coming into the offseason, priority 1 was re-signing Josh Naylor. Priority 1A was bolstering that bullpen. And they did that with what the Mariners feel like is one of the most underrated relievers in baseball, and Jose Ferrer. Obviously, they gave up one of the top catching prospects in all of baseball, Harry Ford, in that deal with the Nationals to bring Ferrer here to Seattle. And the Mariners really wanted another lefty, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they're still in talks to try to bring in another established, mid-bullpen lefty type. I think that is something that's still on their wish list here, but it's a fair question. They really rode those guys, particularly Gabe Spire, Edward Bizzardo. Those guys were just gassed by Game 7 of the ALCS. You saw it. You can question some of the bullpen usage stuff, but those guys got them there. They rode them hard, and they were going to ride them to the end. That's what you had, and those are the guys who come through so often for the Mariners. But yeah, I think it's a question for any team that goes that deep into the playoffs and has to rely on the same 4 or 5 guys so much. Gabe Spire, I'm really curious to see. He's going to pitch for Team USA in the WBC. I was a little surprised at that. Not that he didn't deserve it. I think he was the most dominant lefty in baseball last year, out of the bullpen outside of our oldest Chapman. And I'm curious to see what he looks like this year and what he looks like for Team USA too. But he certainly deserves it with the year he had. But I do think bringing Ferrer in, and they brought in some kind of under the radar types too. It's something the Mariners love to do with their pitching development. Bring in the guys that maybe are cast offs from other teams, and maybe they see something, tweak something, or ask the guy to throw more sliders. They love to do, or just throw more strikes at the end of the day. Paul Sewald is maybe the best example they've had of that in recent years, but they always seem to find some hidden gem too that becomes a key seventh inning guy for them. So again, AJ, it's a really good question. It's a fair question. But if you were to lay out just the guys that they have, Andres Munoz, Matt Brash, Ferrer, Spire, Bizardo, I think the Mariners would kind of line up those five with any five really in the American League right now.
For a team that's strapped for cash, you always look at every transaction and go, oh, is that a good use of it? Rob Refsnyder, somebody that wasn't brought up at all in this conversation, was he a need that they have? When you look at their outfield, it's all right-handed with Victor Robles. You have Rosarena and Julio Rodriguez. Are they bringing in Refsnyder just because of the fact that he can hit lefties really well and can zone, is left-handed, and really they're paying a platoon DH $6.25 million?
Yeah, I'll be honest, Erik, I was a little surprised at that number at the end of the day too. But again, it shows me that the Mariners, yes, you could say they're pretty right-handed heavy in the outfield, but off the bench. And then when you're talking about a platoon sort of DH guy too, they really like Dom Kenzone. Luke Raley is looking for a bounce back season, but both those guys are lefties. They're going to get some time in right field and DH, and then Refsnyder will kind of be your backup first baseman too, and maybe fourth, fifth outfielder type. But by all accounts too, he's a great fit in the clubhouse, and I'm sure every team says that they want good clubhouse guys. But I think the Mariners have really embodied that probably as much as anyone in recent years. It's a really, really good, really strong, mature clubhouse led by Cal Raleigh, J.P. Crawford, and you can throw certainly Julio sort of growing up and emerging in a leadership role here too. But they've heard great things about Refsnyder, and again, he crushed lefties the last couple of years, and they feel like as a pinch hitter, part-time DH, part-time, right fielder, wherever you need to plug him in, he was kind of that final piece they needed to round out their bench. And I'm curious to get to know him a little bit better and see what he actually looks like up close. But I do feel like it was a very specific need, and the one guy that they realized they probably had to overpay for a little bit versus the market just to make sure and get him across country here and ultimately sign him.
I think Rob Refsnyder's a great deal. I just think I hear all the Mariners because he's a great player and he has really, really done a great job, and unbelievable dude. But just the whole Mariners like spending money, you're like, how did they spend money and why did they spend it on this? So that was a good answer by you. Last question. We haven't even really talked about Cal Raleigh. Is Cal Raleigh going to be able to have, I'm not even going to say the same type of year. The reason we thought he was the MVP is because it was a historic year. But is there a drop-off in Cal Raleigh to 40 home runs doesn't that detrimentally hurt the Mariners because they needed all 60 homers last year?
The answer, it's not a great answer, but yes and no. I mean, where are those 20 extra home runs going to come, right? If you're not bringing, again, I'm not ruling out Eugenio Suárez, but if you're not bringing Gino back, you lost 26 homers from Jorge Polanco too. You got to find that power from somewhere. I think the Mariners were third in baseball in home runs last year behind the Dodgers and Yankees. They were also third, I think, in stolen bases as well. So they tried to be versatile and diverse with their offense. But it's going to look a little bit different this year. I don't think anyone reasonably expects Cal to hit 60 again. But yeah, you're right. What does it look like if it's only 40 or 45? But he's in the prime of his career. He's in great shape. I actually ran into Cal yesterday. He bought new property in Seattle last summer and is getting settled in here. And he's got, I think, 5 acres now. And he was actually meeting with some guys to get new batting cages installed on his property. He was really excited about that. So I don't think there's anyone questioning Cal Raleigh's work ethic or his commitment. But again, you guys would know better than I would, catching every day, catching as much as he does, and then working with the pitching staff the way he does, hitting for both sides of the plate. I mean, his time, every minute of his day during the season is sort of accounted for. He's got his routine down, and you have to wonder at some point, does he need to take a few extra days off here and there? What are they doing to manage his workload? But if you ask Cal, he wants to be in there. He wants to be behind the plate every day. Again, he's 28, 29 years old in the prime of his career, the picture of health, knock on wood for him. But I'm not sure there's too much of a worry about him not hitting 50 or 60 home runs. You would think, again, Julio Rodriguez, 25 years old now. It's like we've seen him get a little bit better each year working on something. Is this the year where he finally gets off to a good start too, and he becomes the 10 WAR player I think everyone feels like is inside of him? Maybe that's the difference right there. Josh Naylor for a full season. You get him in the middle of that lineup. The Mariners will figure it out somewhere, but again, the power really was a big part of their identity offensively last year, and they're obviously going to have to find those home runs somewhere. If Cal's, you're subtracting 20 from him, and then you're losing Polanco and you're losing Gino too. So I'm curious to see how that unfolds. Absolutely.